By the 1st century BC, the Mediterranean Sea had a problem that everyone knew about and no one wanted to solve. Roman writers described pirate fleets numbering over 1,000 ships. They claimed pirates had sacked more than 400 towns across the Greek coastline and plundered temples that had stood untouched for centuries. They raided the port of Ostia, the gateway to Rome itself. They burned ships in the harbor and looted the warehouses while Roman soldiers watched from the walls. The question was never whether Rome could stop it. Rome had the largest army in the known world. The question was why it did not. The answer was economics. As Hellenistic states weakened and Rome demobilized its fleets after each war, enforcement across the sea became inconsistent. Pirates filled the vacuum, and Rome's incentives were split. Pirates were a threat to Roman trade, but they were also a source of slaves, loot, and profit for provincial governors who looked the other way in exchange for a cut. Piracy was not a failure of Roman power. It was a feature of Roman economics. The pirates even had their own customs for Roman prisoners. When a captive declared himself a citizen of Rome, the pirates would drop to their knees in mock terror, begging forgiveness. Then they would dress him in a toga and sandals so they could recognize his importance. And when they were satisfied with the performance, they would lower a ladder into the open sea and invite him to walk. This was the Mediterranean in 75 BC, a sea ruled by men who answered to no one. And crossing it was a 25-year-old Roman nobleman who had no army, no office, and no idea what was waiting for him off the coast of Asia Minor. Gaius Julius Caesar came from one of the oldest families in Rome. The Julii claimed descent from the goddess Venus herself. But a famous name and an empty treasury are a dangerous combination in a republic built on patronage. His Aunt Julia had married Gaius Marius, the great populist general and Sulla's mortal enemy. When Sulla won the civil war and published his proscription lists, names of men who could be killed on sight with their property seized, Caesar found himself on the wrong side of history. He was barely 20 years old. Sulla reportedly said of the young Caesar, "I see many Mariuses in that boy." His family connections saved his life. But his fortune was confiscated, his wife's dowry was stripped, and he was forced into hiding in the countryside, changing houses at night, sick with fever, bribing soldiers to let him pass. After Sulla died in 78 BC, Caesar returned to Rome and reinvented himself. He became a prosecutor. He was brilliant in court, sharp-tongued, fearless. He went after men who had profited from Sulla's proscriptions and won. He was building a reputation the only way a young man without money could, with his voice. Now he was sailing to Rhodes to study under Apollonius Molon, the same teacher who had trained Cicero, the greatest orator of the age. Caesar was not going to war. He was going to school. He held no military command. He held no political office. He was a young man sharpening the only weapon he had. Somewhere near the island of Pharmacusa, off the coast of modern Turkey, the Cilician pirates found him. It was not a fight. Caesar's vessel was a merchant craft with a handful of attendants, a physician, and 2 servants. The pirates boarded without resistance. They recognized a Roman nobleman when they saw one. Fine clothing, educated speech, attendants. This was not a sailor. This was a ransom. They set his ransom at 20 talents of silver. A single talent was more than a laborer could earn in a lifetime. 20 talents was a fortune by any standard. Caesar was insulted, not by the capture, by the price. He told them they were fools for undervaluing him and demanded they raise the ransom to 50 talents. He said it with the confidence of a man who had never once considered the possibility that he was not the most important person in any room he entered. The pirates thought it was hilarious. They had captured hundreds of Romans. None of them had ever argued that their ransom should be higher. They took it as the arrogance of a rich boy who did not understand his situation. Caesar sent most of his attendants to the city of Miletus to raise the ransom money, keeping only his physician and 2 servants. Then he settled in. For 38 days, the island of Pharmacusa became the strangest prison in the ancient world. Caesar ordered the pirates to be quiet when he wanted to sleep. He wrote speeches and poems and forced them to sit and listen. When they did not react with sufficient admiration, he called them illiterate barbarians to their faces. He joined their games. He ate with them. He treated them, in Plutarch's words, as if the men were not his watchers, but his royal bodyguard. And repeatedly, with a smile on his face, he told them that the moment he was free, he would come back, find them, and crucify every last one of them. They laughed every time. Plutarch wrote that the pirates attributed his boldness of speech to a certain simplicity and boyish mirth. They thought he was joking. But here is what the pirates never understood. Caesar was not bonding with them. He was studying them. Every game of dice, every shared meal, every evening of forced poetry was intelligence. He was learning their numbers, their routines, their anchorage, their patterns. Every joke was surveillance, dressed as bravado. On the 38th day, the ransom arrived from Miletus, 50 talents of silver. Caesar paid it without hesitation. The pirates counted it, verified it, and let him walk. Any other man would have sailed home. Caesar sailed to Miletus. What happened next is one of the most extraordinary acts in the history of the Roman Republic. A 25-year-old man with no military command, no political office, and no legal authority of any kind walked into the port of Miletus and convinced them to give him a fleet. He did it on nothing but the force of his name and his voice. The same voice he had been sharpening in Roman courts. The same voice he had been practicing on pirates for 38 days. Caesar raised a small fleet, armed it, and sailed back to Pharmacusa. The pirates were still there, anchored off the same island. They had not moved. They had taken their 50 talents and stayed to celebrate. They never took him seriously, not once. Caesar captured nearly all of them. He recovered his 50 talents. He seized everything they had, and he brought the pirates in chains to the prison at Pergamum. Caesar went to Marcus Junius, the Roman governor of Asia, expecting him to execute the pirates. Crucifixion was the standard punishment. The case was straightforward. The evidence was chained to a wall in Pergamum. But Junius did not act. He looked at the captured silver, and he looked at the prisoners, and he saw profit. Slaves sold well in the eastern markets. The pirate captain alone would fetch a premium. The governor told Caesar he would take the matter under advisement. He expected that to be the end of it. This was Rome's piracy problem, distilled into a single room, a corrupt governor who would rather sell criminals for profit than enforce the law. A system where justice was available only when it did not interfere with someone's income. Caesar had spent 38 days as a prisoner because men like Junius had spent decades looking the other way. Caesar left the governor's residence. He did not argue. He did not appeal. He walked to the prison at Pergamum, removed the pirates himself, and carried out the sentence on his own authority. He crucified them on a headland overlooking the sea, where passing ships could see the crosses from the water. But before the nails were driven, Caesar ordered their throats cut. He had promised them crucifixion, and he delivered it. But these were men who had fed him, played games with him, and listened to his poetry for 38 days. He spared them the slow death. The promise was kept, but so was something else. In a single episode, Before he had ever commanded a legion or held a seat in the Senate, Julius Caesar demonstrated every quality that would define the rest of his life. Personal courage that bordered on recklessness, ruthless efficiency once he decided to act, total contempt for institutions that moved too slowly, a willingness to operate outside the law when the law refused to serve justice, and a calculated blend of brutality and mercy that made every man who dealt with him uncertain of what he would do next. There is evidence that Caesar himself retold the pirate story years later on the floor of the Roman Senate. He used it to argue that the Republic should grant Pompey the Great an extraordinary military command to sweep the Mediterranean clean of piracy, once and for all. Caesar turned his own humiliation into a political weapon. He stood before the most powerful men in Rome and said, "I know what piracy costs. I paid 50 talents to prove it. And I solved the problem myself, because your governor was too corrupt to do his job." The Senate passed the Lex Gabinia in 67 BC. It gave Pompey supreme command over the entire Mediterranean, 500 ships, and 120,000 men. In 3 months, Pompey swept the sea clean. The piracy crisis that Rome had tolerated for decades was over. But the precedent was set. The Republic could not solve its own problems, so it handed extraordinary power to one man and hoped he would give it back. Pompey did. The next man would not. 20 years after the island of Pharmacusa, Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon with a single legion and overthrew the Roman Republic. The senators who tried to stop him made the same mistake the pirates had made. They heard his warnings, they watched him prepare, and they assumed he was bluffing. The pirates laughed because they thought a 25-year-old prisoner was making empty threats. The Republic fell because it made the same assumption about the most dangerous man in Rome. What looks like arrogance is only arrogance if the man cannot deliver. When he can, it is a promise. And Julius Caesar always kept his promises.